Welcome back to Newegg TV. I'm Kerry Holzman, and it's time to talk tough with ASUS. Joining us in studio today is JJ from ASUS. Welcome, JJ.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here, and I see you brought with you some toys.
Yes, I definitely have. I'm really excited about actually this board right here. This is one of our latest in terms of the Tough series. So this is specifically the Sabertooth Z170. So this is a really popular board. It's now been around for multiple generations, and users are always really interested to see what we're doing with this specific series every generation.
Who is this board targeted to?
In terms of really the targeted kind of users that we have out there, it still is kind of the general PC DIY gaming enthusiasts, but at the same time it also sees a lot of usage from the more kind of prosumer or professional type of DIY users, so users that might be building their systems for content creation, for advanced productivity, or essentially they have a higher dependency on their system. But at its heart though, when we talk about how it's been designed and developed, it's really targeted towards users that care about maximum uptime. They care about reliability and durability, and they also have a really high focus when it comes to cooling and monitoring capabilities for the motherboard.
So what makes the board tough?
So that's a really actually good question, and it actually comes down to a number of different levels. So one, first and foremost, when we talk about the design and development of the board is really painstakingly laid out in terms of us maximizing the selection of the components, which all go through an independent military specification validation. Our goal is to not only take those high quality components, but then put that on a high quality board design and then validate that entire design to be able to ensure that it has an outstanding level of performance, reliability, and also even interoperability and compatibility. We go through a much more extensive level of testing on tough boards than we even do for our traditional series of boards. There's a huge amount of time and effort that the board goes through to ultimately be able to be qualified as a tough series board.
I like the look of what you guys call the armor that you use here on the front and on the back of the motherboard. Is that just there for looks?
No, I mean definitely aesthetics are extremely important in terms of the Sabertooth, just like it is actually for all our boards. We try to weight everything in terms of a real benefit to the user in terms of how they work with their systems from a DIY experience. So the thermal armor actually complements a number of different things when it comes to improving the overall cooling capabilities as well as improving the durability of the board. So first and foremost, when we talk about elements of durability, you're going to have the dust defenders. So the dust defenders, you can see I've populated in a couple of different ports and slots on this board.
Yeah, it kind of looked like it didn't have any PCI Express slots.
And that's a cool aesthetic look because it helps to kind of black out the board, makes it look a little bit more clean for some people that like that look and feel. But at the same time, it helps to stop dust, debris, and dander from settling inside those slots, which over time, if you have a lot of stuff that settles in there when you install maybe a new DIMM or maybe you install a new graphics card or some type of add-in card, you can actually have initialization issues. And even in some worst case scenarios, you could have a potential short. So this just helps to minimize those type of situations. Now on top of that, of course, we still also maintain the Tough Fortifier, which is of course here on the back of the board. So very similar in terms of what we have on the ROG series boards that come equipped with it. You help to minimize torsion, you improve rigidity, you help to minimize you making towards any contact with the prickly points on the back of the board, and it also helps to serve as a partial heat sink to dissipate heat from the actual VRM section.
That's right, because heat doesn't just occur on the front of the board, heat's happening on the back.
Definitely. There's actually a pooling of heat in that entire area, and as part of that actually the board itself even has convection holes so that air actually passes through the board and exhausts outwards. So
it's a vented motherboard.
Yeah, so it helps to actually keep the onboard temperature lower as well. Now this works in concert with the entire thermal armor design, which actually can incorporate 2 assist fans, which can be fully controlled within the software suite or within the UEFI to help to provide additional airflow to the VRM assembly as well as be channeled through the entirety of the board. So definitely the thermal armor is a balance of both aesthetics, but also actually having some real usability.
Now seeing as how this is a Z170 chipset, overclocking is a given?
Yes, definitely a given, and just like our entire range of boards, it has a very, very, very good overclocking capabilities. There are some basic profile options inside the UEFI that allow for moderate overclocking in terms, essentially, in quick and easy ways. But for users that, of course, want to be able to pursue full-fledged manual overclocking, this board is just as capable as any of the boards in our Signature series or even within our ROG series. There's just going to be some differences in how users can pursue it, but you can definitely feel confident, regardless of whether you're going to run stock or overclocked, you can get definitely a great experience from the board.
Now, JJ, I have to assume this board has an onboard gigabit LAN connection.
That's correct. It does have an Intel integrated gigabit connection, but it actually has dual gigabit Ethernet. And for this generation, just like the rest of our Z170 performance-oriented boards, they also do include our LAN guard design. What that means essentially is that they're constructed using an SMT production process. So this process affords us more space with a higher level of precision and tolerance, and we're able to significantly improve certain areas such as surge, as well as ESD performance. That's beyond, of course, the other areas of ESD performance improvements that we've done for actually all the connections on this board.
One of the frustrating things that can happen when gaming is when your system's doing other things, it's tying up your network and it's affecting your game performance. Has ASUS introduced any technology to improve that experience?
Definitely. So actually, beyond, of course, these being Intel NICs, which are great performers in terms of UDP performance, they also come included with our TurboLAN software, which is essentially is packet priority control software. So if you want to go ahead and be able to optimize for games, music, movies, or downloading, whatever it is that you're going to be doing on your network, you can go ahead and manage that very easily through the application.
I'm glad that ASUS has addressed that. And the other thing, of course, is audio. When people talk about gaming, I hear them talking about processors and GPUs. I very rarely hear people talking about their sound card, and yet it's a critical component to most games.
Definitely, and you know, for us, once again, with Sabertooth, while definitely gaming is a large demographic for us, we definitely have a lot of people that use it, like I said, in a prosumer sense that still appreciate improvements to audio. So here we've gone ahead and incorporated the improvements of audio that had been brought over actually from the ROG's original isolated audio design. We have a high-grade ALC 1150 audio codec that's shielded. We have our D-pop filter, and we even have an operational amplifier on there as well to be able to punch up and give you a little bit better driving strength for those headphones. So all the way around, you get a nice improvement in terms of the audio on this board for whatever you're going to be doing, whether it's going to be music, movies, or games.
Now I want to take a minute and talk a bit about the cooling and fan options on this board, and specifically in the box there are these two fans that I've never seen included with a motherboard before.
It's actually something that we've had now for a couple of generations on the Sabertooth series of motherboards, and specifically that kind of ties in with the focus on cooling and being able to enhance the cooling experience and the capabilities of the motherboard. So we talked about that thermal armor design being present on the board, and it wasn't just there from an aesthetic perspective. And actually we have essentially shunts that are underneath that help to guide directed airflow to specific portions of the board and also take advantage of those convection holes that we talked about. So when you place these assist fans in, one here in the VRM and another one here in the central portion of the board, they help to provide direct focused air, which you can either treat as an exhaust or an intake. You can also fully control those from within the UEFI or within the operating system via the Thermal Radar software. So this allows you through essentially the layout of the board, the design of the thermal armor, and then of course here the valve system, you can go ahead and really customize the airflow to be able to provide the best experience possible when it comes to the overall cooling capabilities of the board.
But you don't actually have to use these, is that right?
They're correct. You don't have to use them. We would strongly recommend that you utilize them if you want to be able to fully take advantage of what the board can bring to the table. And there's also a cool feature that we have, is it's called fan over time, which those fans can still actually operate even after the system has been shut down. And the reason why it does that is that they help to essentially cycle through any remnant hotspot airs that are built up in the system. So it can help to essentially just cool down those components.
Now the valves you mentioned earlier, they're here on the top of the board. How do you know when to open or when to close those?
It really depends on your airflow configuration. So depending on how you want to define how the VRM airflow is working is essentially when you'd either want to open them or close them. Take for instance different cooling solutions like a traditional tower heatsink. It's going to provide much more airflow that you may want to exhaust outwards, whereas let's say like a closed loop liquid cooling solution is actually going to work differently. There's not as much airflow that's provided to the CPU socket to the VRM area. So it really depends in terms of how you set up your cooling. Also, even an additional touch there is we also have a little dust filter right here, which will actually go into your
that's
IO
so
shield.
cute. Let me see that.
So that's a nice little touch that we have there. But getting back to what you were talking about in terms of testing things out, this also goes to, I guess, the bigger picture in terms of one of the really advanced cooling features on here, which is the whole thermal radar system. While a lot of people focus on the cover, the board itself has an extensive number of actually onboard temperature sensors that can all be weighted in real time. And so that information helps you to really accurately know every single temperature point. There's actually 12 different temperature points. It's all sprinkled throughout the board so that you have the most complete sense of really what's the temperature across the entirety of your board. And this all actually feeds into the thermal radar design, where this works in conjunction with all the fan headers. Now I know that you've talked about in your builds always being interested in what's the type of flexibility you have when it comes to fan headers.
Yes, there's nothing more frustrating than having more fans Then I have fan headers.
Right.
How many fan headers does this board come
So
with?
this board actually has 11 fan headers. So there's a huge amount, and that's actually enabled through a specialized Super I/O controller, which is part of essentially the chip that helps to enable all the fan controls. And there's also a TUF ICE microprocessor that's exclusive to the TUF series that actually does all the temperature weighting and balancing and response.
So you're saying it's got a dedicated processor for controlling those fans?
Yes.
So these are PWM fans?
Yes, it actually can support both 3-pin and 4-pin fans, and they actually all fully support automatic fan calibration as well. And the great thing is that this can also be weighted in different zones. So this board exclusively has the ability to take multiple temperature points and weight the response based off of specific zones that you have within your system. Really want to get crazy, you could add on, PWM splitter cables, or you could even get the fan extension card to even give yourself more fans that you could connect to this board with more temperature input sources that could be mapped to any one of these fan headers.
Now on this board, JJ, I'm looking at 2, 4, 6, 8 SATA ports, and I see 2 SATA Express ports, but I've never seen a SATA Express drive.
That's correct. As of right now, you don't actually have any type of SATA Express solutions, but what we have gone ahead and done is developed a front USB 3 bay that connects to the SATA Express bus because it can utilize the PCI Express. And the reason why that was done is because there's currently no standardized USB 3.1 front header.
So you're actually utilizing the SATA Express ports as sort of a breakout box, if you will.
Correct. To
bring
be able
those-
to provide the bandwidth so that you can either have one option will be USB 3.1 Type A, and the other one will be USB 3.1 Type C that also supports USB power delivery.
I'm just excited to see a SATA Express port being used.
I definitely agree with that.
Now also in the box, there was this add-in card right here. It's an M.2 add-in card.
Correct. That's actually a revised version of the one that we originally introduced in X99, so it's even thinner profile, it's maximized for airflow, and also it's a little bit aesthetically, it looks a little bit nicer because it's a little bit cleaner. But this board actually also features M.2 natively on board in an optimal position that's away, once again, from where a lot of the heat builds up in terms of either closer to the CPU or to the primary graphics card. If you want to get really performance oriented, you can of course RAID 2 M.2 based drives, and we even make it super simple for you to be able to do that as we have a RAID wizard built into our UEFI.
So I can use both the add-in card and the built-in M.2.
Correct, you can use those simultaneously.
Now I assume you've got USB 3.1 ports on the back as well?
Yes, we have both Type C and Type A.
There's also this one USB port that's standing all by itself.
Yeah, that's actually where things get interesting. That's our TUF Detective port. Essentially what it allows users to do is to be able to have low-level access to the board to be able to do troubleshooting and diagnostic and monitoring. So once they download the app on their smartphone or their tablet, they connect the cable, you can see all the postcode information in real time. So the post is the power on self-test when your system starts up. If you have a problem essentially with the board initializing, maybe it's having CPU initialization, memory, PCIe, some type of device is having a problem, historically you might have looked at the postcode and not understood what 55 meant or something along those lines. Now you can have it read to you in string format so that you can clearly troubleshoot your board. So this is really valuable. In addition to that, you can also have full hardware level readings for all the temperature points and things like voltages. So all that information is presented to you in a really easy to digest hardware level fashion that's independent of anything. So if you want to be able to just have that connected, be able to see all your values, you're good to go.
So it reminds me of the OBD2, the onboard diagnostics connector on a car, where you plug it in and it tells you what's going on with your engine.
It's very similar to that.
You're just going to take a USB cable from the board to your smartphone or tablet,
Yep.
download the app.
And you're good to go.
Well, that's a very welcome feature. Now I'm noticing from the title of this board, it's a Sabertooth Mark I. That seems to imply there are other Sabertooth boards?
There's actually another Sabertooth board, specifically the Mark S.
Ah, now JG, I remember this board from the Consumer Electronics Show. This is a sexy looking motherboard.
It definitely is. I mean, we've been really kind of the innovators in terms of introducing white motherboards to the market, and so this is just continuing to offer another option to users that really want kind of a distinctive look and feel in terms of a white motherboard for kind of white-oriented systems. But at the same time, the great thing is that while this is a bit more cost-aggressive than the Mark I SKU, you're not compromising on the core quality and the attributes of what make this a TUF series motherboard. So you still get the TUF components, you still get the advanced thermal radar system, you still get rich connectivity on the board, and you still get a 5-year warranty, which I think is really one of the distinguishing points for a Sabertooth series motherboard.
Yeah, 5-year warranty is outstanding.
So it's beyond that, I think that all the way around this is really going to be a great choice for somebody that's looking just for a little bit more price aggressive solution, but still doesn't really compromise on all the core characteristics of having a reliable and stable board that's still going to give you a great deal of flexibility and functionality when it comes to cooling and monitoring.
Well, thanks again, JJ, for joining us in studio today and introducing us to this new line of motherboards from ASUS.
As always, it's been fantastic to be here.
Please remember to click like and subscribe, and for more great content, check out our new video shopping platform at newegg.tv. I'm Kerry Holzman, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.